Welcome to the third and last of the three-part series titled Top 3 Material Management Secrets of Successful Lean Professionals. I'm Richard Rahn with the Leonardo Group. And as with the previous parts, 1 and 2, I'm keeping each of them short, so you can actually take the time to watch them. And this is an unscripted presentation, so just pretend that I'm sitting across the table from you and having a chat about these topics. Okay, so let's go right to secret number 3. Okay, so some of you may be familiar with the slogan, kind of a general slogan used at Toyota for many years, and it is continuous improvement and respect for people. So in this section 3, we'll be talking about really both issues, but primarily the respect for people part of it. Now, respect may have a different meaning in the Toyota system than the normal usage of the word. You might think that respecting people is giving them an easy time, and this is not quite the way they look at it. In fact, I heard it said, this was, in a conversation I had with an actual Toyota person, Toyota manager. He said that if you don't give someone a full-time job or a real job or a complete job, then that's a sign of disrespect. And that's not how we often think of it. We think of, giving people an easy job and respecting them, but that's not how they look at it. So on the issue of people, let's look at 3 separate categories of initiatives that we might want to undertake related to material management and relating to people. So this illustration here, I think, ties nicely to the slogan, continuous improvement and respect for people. And what you see here are 3 bubbles. First one at the top is standardization. So what we're saying here is that respect for people and actually working with people directly requires, especially if they're new to the organization, requires some training and certification, training and confirmation in a standard way of doing things, standard work. So presumably standard work in whatever job we're talking about is the best way that we know how to do things, at least at the present moment. And it's also work that's designed to be safe and ergonomic and efficient. So it makes sense that the respect for people that we might show, especially to a new employee, would be to train them in doing the work that way. So that's standardization. The second little bubble here, the green one, says execution. So once people have been trained, once people know how to do a particular job, and again, we're talking here about any job, but if you want to tie it to material management jobs, it would be all of the details related to material management, including selecting, picking, delivering, planning, supply chain, so all those issues. Once people have been trained in the best way that we know how to do a job, then we have this keeping it up issue, execution, doing it. And under execution, we're talking about something called a lean management system, so that people are supported and also checked, audited in doing that standard work. So we can't assume that just because someone is trained, they're going to continue doing standard work forever in the future. So we have a process in place to check on that and support that execution of standard work. And then the third bubble here, improvement, that means that even though the standardization or standard work is the best way that we know how to do a particular job today, there's no reason why it can't be improved. So we have the whole improvement cycle. Again, tying back to the Toyota slogan, continuous improvement, this is the word Kaizen, continuous improvement of that standardized task. And of course, any improvement that is made is incorporated back into the standard, and then we have a continual cycle here, a virtuous cycle of continuous improvement. So let's go on then and refocus or focus more directly on material management and some examples of how this concept that we just presented here might apply. Now, here's some points we wanted to discuss related to the model that we just presented: standardization, execution, and improvement, that we need to keep in mind as we design our optimum process. So when we create a standardized definition of work and when we execute and so on, these are some points related to material management that we need to keep in mind and try to accomplish. First one is don't ask operators to do too much. So the issue here is we want to isolate operators, meaning people building the products, from having to do material management as much as possible. We're not saying that they can't do anything related to materials, but we want to try to keep it to a minimum, because their main job is to build products, as it says. Build products better, so they do have a responsibility for improvement, but that improvement is related not so much to the material delivery system, but to how the products are built, so the work involved in that. Now, I threw in a little side comment here. If we're talking about hospitals, they could use material management or supplies management systems in there as well in a hospital, but we're not building products, we're taking care of patients. But the same issue applies. Don't ask nurses to do too much related to supplies management. Make it convenient for them. Make it available. That's our job as a designer of the material delivery system. Now, point number 2, someone needs to own the signaling step. By signaling, I mean we probably have or we want a pull system. So we consume material and there's a signal to bring more. We're not pushing material onto the floor based on simply computer analysis. So someone needs to be the owner of that. Usually that's a supervisor person, or at Toyota it's probably someone like a team leader would be responsible in a physical area for the management of the material delivery system and the role that those folks have to play. For example, if you're using paper cards, for the collection of those cards and the delivery of those cards to where they need to go. So we need to have an owner for each area, someone where the buck stops. Usually, as I said, that's a supervisor. Now, once we have that process in place, step number 3 here on the list, we need to trust that process is going to work. It's part of someone's job, but we need to have a verification as well. Kind of the Ronald Reagan expression, talking about the Soviet Union. Trust but verify. And what we're verifying here is the collection of cards. Now, interesting story. At Toyota, what they have is an actual light that is turned on to signal that the cards are ready for pickup by the routine milk run material delivery person. And if that light doesn't go on, there's a signal that goes back to a central office, and a follow-up phone call can be made to make sure that every time those delivery carts come around, those cards can be picked up. They're going to be ready. So they have a formal step, not simply relying on the diligence of the supervisor. There's a backup step to make sure that that actually happens. Step number 4 is don't make special trips. So the collection of signals, if you're using manual signals, doesn't require any or too much special effort. It's just part of the routine material delivery cycle. And I mention this because there are some organizations that have special trips, special rounds where they go around and collect cards as a dedicated trip, and you really want to avoid that. And the last one is let the computer do the auditing. What we're suggesting here is that it's not good enough to simply have a signaling system in place. You need to have a way of checking to make sure it's being maintained, even down to cards being lost. And I want to point out to you or refer you to a resource. It's a website you could check out called b2bmrp.com. And you can find, maybe with a little searching there, you can find a discussion of how this could be done in an automated system. It would require cards to be scanned, of course. It would require cards, if you're using manual cards, to be barcoded. But the system then can keep track of cards and raise a red flag if it looks like there's something wrong with your signaling system. And that's really critically important. This is what Toyota Material Handling does. I'm sure many other companies as well, but Toyota Material Handling does this as well. So every card, and they are using paper cards, but every card is actually serialized and tracked, so that if it hasn't been replenished within a certain time frame, a flag is raised, and then a human being, typically a team leader, will go look and research and find out what happened. So critically important to keep the material delivery system running smoothly. So here's our obligatory cat picture. Every presentation needs to have a cat picture. And when we come back to our original slogan that we mentioned, continuous improvement and respect for people, one thing to be aware of when we talk about continuous improvement is, yes, we want to engage everyone in our organization in suggesting ideas, but don't think that by doing that, you're going to achieve huge financial gains necessarily. You do expect the gains to be positive. You do expect it to be a beneficial effort, but a study that was done at Toyota a few years ago by a Japanese university, tracking down where the actual hard dollar benefits were coming from, found that 90% of those benefits were not coming from small suggestions or employee engagement ideas. They were coming from larger scale engineering projects that were led by engineers and managers, and probably longer scale projects than just a couple days worth of effort. So example of that might be a new system, right? A new computerized system or automation, bigger, probably higher dollar, but bigger effort projects, but this is where most of the benefits actually came. So we're not saying that we don't want people's involvement or it's not worth it. It is worth it, but don't expect a huge financial gain from small improvement suggestions. Now back to how we train folks in standard work, how you train your organization. At Leonardo Group, we have 2 3-day workshops that we teach, lean material management and mixed model line design. From our point of view, most of the benefits within a manufacturing company are going to come from these 2 areas. Now, there are a lot of other areas. There's product design. There are a lot of other things you could point to as being ripe targets for improvement. And certainly there's no contest, there's no disagreement that waste is available for elimination virtually anywhere you want to look. But lean material management and then line design itself in a manufacturing company is a big, nice pool of potential benefits. And that's why we've chosen to focus on those 2. Now, in terms of training your staff, yes, live courses, 3-day workshop that I mentioned is nice from the point of view that you can get people together in the same room. People can communicate with each other. They can learn from other companies if it's a public class, and they can also have a one-on-one discussion with a live instructor. But if you have many thousands of people in your organization, that might be tough to accomplish, get everyone through a live class. So an online version of the same material is another good option. And then in our training, we've introduced this concept called the memory jogger. And a memory jogger is a way of following up after the class to make sure that your students are staying fresh with the topics and that it doesn't just fade from memory. So let me show you what we mean by memory jogger here. So if you get trained in a topic, standard work, and you don't, especially if you don't get a chance to apply it right away, then the learning curve that you'll experience when you actually get trained will soon start to degrade. And now you're on the forgetting curve, as shown here. So you get up to a certain level of understanding, but then especially if you don't have a chance to practice it, then you start forgetting. And we can all relate to that. Now, countermeasure number 1, the best way to counter this effect, which is not a good thing, obviously, would be to have a chance to apply what you've learned. So you learn something and then you apply it right away. You do it, in other words, and your forgetting curve is really going to be much, much less because you're actually doing what you learned. Now, that's great, but if you don't have a chance to apply it immediately, for example, line design, it's not something that comes along every day where you have an opportunity to actually apply this, then countermeasure number 2 would be reinforcement. And the reinforcement that we're suggesting and offering is called the Memory Jogger program, whereby students in a training class will, every week, will get an email with a link to a short online lesson. By short, I mean 5 minutes or less, where they review a topic that they learned in either the full online class that they took earlier or in the live class that they took earlier. And they'll continue getting these short lessons over a 1-year period or even longer. So this is a way of keeping fresh. It's not going to completely eliminate the forgetting curve, but it's going to help to reinforce the key points that were learned. So we've added this to both of our classes. So students that graduate from our workshops will actually be automatically signed up for the Memory Jogger program. So let's review briefly what we've covered in these 3 parts, part 1, 2, and 3. on the topic of material management, lean material management. First point, and this was part number 1, was integrate MRP and Kanban, or integrate MRP and pull systems, where Kanban in this example would be the signal, which is oftentimes a manual process, and MRP would be planning or longer term process. And as I mentioned just in this part, we can use MRP to do validation of our material delivery system, validate that the manual steps are actually being executed correctly. So there's some exciting opportunities there, and this is exactly what Toyota does internally. Second point is design delivery routes to a short takt time or short cycle time. This is really important to shortage-proof our material delivery system. In other words, you want to design the frequency of delivery of parts to be a fraction of the amount of inventory that you have. And I think we suggested 4 to 1 would be a minimum kind of goal, and maybe even more than that. So that if we have a shift worth of parts, you would want to have a delivery cycle that's 1/4 of that shift, or 4 times a shift. You would have a delivery cycle coming by. And this is the best way to shortage-proof your line without adding a whole bunch of additional inventory. Third point is we need to train people in standard work. So you have to define the work first, and then you train people to do that. And then you have to sustain the system by auditing continually. Typically, this is the responsibility first of team leaders and supervisors, and then the management above that. And we want to design then a complete and integrated lean management system covering the delivery of materials. Or if it's a hospital, we're talking about the delivery of supplies, and have a well-designed system in place that we execute. Now, if you'd like to see a well-designed material delivery system in action, we have a workshop coming up that I've mentioned in previous parts of this 3-part course, coming up at Toyota Material Handling. That's in Columbus, Indiana, September 22nd through the 24th. So part of our 3-day experience is going to be understanding all of these concepts in much greater detail, but also then going out on the factory floor for two Toyota-led tours, so you can actually see this in action. And I'll have to say, of all the factories we've been to, and we've been to hundreds, this one is probably executing a lean material management system the best that we've seen. Again, haven't been everywhere, so there might be better ones, but of the ones we've seen, this is really the best. So we invite you to check this out, and hope you can join us there. You can click on the link down below on this page to find out more. You can read the entire 3-day agenda, and we hope we can see you there. So this concludes part 3 of the 3-part series, the top 3 material management secrets of successful lean professionals. Hope you found this useful. I hope you picked up a few tips along the way. Even one of all this material might make it worthwhile, certainly. And finally, we hope to see you in September at Columbus, Indiana, at the Toyota Material Handling plant. If you can make that, it's a great experience, actually a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And we'll be covering all of these issues in a lot more detail. Thanks, and bye for now. Thanks, and bye for now.